Somewhere beneath the Arctic Ocean right now, there is a Russian submarine unlike any other vessel currently at sea. It is 184 meters long. It is the longest submarine ever constructed, and it was never originally meant to look like this. The submarine is K-329 Belgorod, a Cold War hull that spent nearly 2 decades in a shipyard before being reborn into something far stranger. What began in 1992 as an Oscar II-class guided missile submarine, designed to hunt American carrier groups, was eventually cut open, stretched, rebuilt, and transformed into a platform for an entirely new kind of weapon. Bolted into its hull, or more accurately integrated into a purpose-built launch compartment, are 6 enormous tubes. Each one is designed to carry something that does not fit neatly into any traditional military category. The weapon is called Poseidon. NATO refers to it as Canyon. In its earliest designation, it was known as Status 6. Status 6 sounds clinical, technical, almost bureaucratic, the kind of name you would expect in a classified engineering document. Poseidon, chosen later through a public naming campaign, sounds mythological, which is appropriate because the scale of what this system promises is almost mythic. On paper, Poseidon is described as a torpedo. That description is misleading. A standard heavyweight torpedo, the type submarines have been firing since the Second World War, is roughly 7 meters long and weighs about 2 tons. Poseidon is closer to 20 meters long, around 2 meters in diameter, and estimated to weigh somewhere between 80 and 100 tons. This is not a torpedo in the traditional sense. It is closer to a small, unmanned submarine, and here is where it becomes unusual. Poseidon carries a nuclear warhead. Most credible estimates place it between 1 and 2 megatons. That alone would make it strategically significant. But the warhead is only part of the story. Inside the body of the vehicle is something far more ambitious. A miniature nuclear reactor. Not just a bomb, a power plant. The reactor generates heat. That heat produces steam. The steam drives turbines, which either spin a propulsor or generate electricity for electric propulsion. In principle, it operates on the same physics that power nuclear submarines, just compressed into a radically smaller space. Unlike conventional torpedoes, which rely on batteries or fuel that eventually deplete, Poseidon's endurance would be limited only by reactor lifespan and mechanical reliability. Russian sources claim a range of up to 10,000 kilometers and operating depths approaching 1,000 meters. A multi-megaton underwater detonation near a port would generate extreme overpressure, severe infrastructure destruction, and long-term radioactive contamination. For a naval power dependent on major coastal bases, Norfolk, San Diego, Yokosuka, that prospect is strategically serious. Which leads to the question that has surrounded this system since it first appeared publicly. How much of Poseidon is operational capability, and how much is theater? The Russian government has a documented pattern of unveiling spectacular weapons via animated presentations, dramatic speeches, and bold claims. Some of these systems later materialize, others remain prototypes. A few encounter significant technical setbacks. So, what is Poseidon? A genuine strategic breakthrough? A partially mature technology demonstrator? Or an extraordinarily expensive psychological instrument? The available evidence suggests an uncomfortable answer. It is likely some combination of all three. Western intelligence agencies have tracked testing activity associated with the program since at least 2016. Satellite imagery confirms the modification of Belgorod and construction of additional submarines designed to carry similar systems. Test launches of mass-dimensional models, inert vehicles matching size and weight, have been reported. But publicly available confirmation of a full end-to-end operational deployment remains absent, and that ambiguity may not be accidental. In nuclear deterrence, perception matters almost as much as hardware. You do not necessarily need a weapon that can definitely destroy your opponent. You need a weapon your opponent believes can. The idea of delivering nuclear destruction from beneath the sea is not new. Soviet physicists considered underwater thermonuclear strikes as early as the 1950s. The logic was simple. Major American cities, ports, and naval installations sit along coastlines. Delivering a weapon by sea would bypass air defenses entirely. Early Cold War proposals envisioned massive nuclear torpedoes, crude by modern standards, but conceptually similar. Those programs were abandoned as impractical. Poseidon resurrects the concept, but with 21st century engineering. Whether it fulfills its advertised capabilities remains uncertain. What is clear is that it represents something structurally different from traditional nuclear systems. If Poseidon were simply a very large torpedo with a very large warhead, the conversation would end there. But the nuclear reactor changes everything. Miniaturizing a functioning nuclear power plant into a 20-meter autonomous underwater vehicle is not just ambitious. It is an engineering challenge that sits right at the edge of what modern naval technology can plausibly achieve. Every nuclear submarine operates on the same fundamental principle. A reactor splits atoms. That produces heat. Heat turns water into steam. Steam spins turbines. Turbines generate propulsion and electricity. It is a closed, controlled, continuously monitored system, operated by a trained crew with layers of safety mechanisms. Poseidon removes the crew, and that is where things become complicated. Russian sources suggest that Poseidon uses a compact reactor potentially derived from liquid metal-cooled designs once used in the Soviet Alpha-class submarines. Those submarines were technological marvels of the 1970s. They were extraordinarily fast and capable of deep diving, but they were also notoriously difficult to maintain. Liquid metal coolant, typically a lead-bismuth alloy, must remain at high temperature. If it cools and solidifies, the reactor can be permanently damaged. Alpha-class boats required intense maintenance oversight. Several suffered serious reactor issues during service. Now, imagine placing a version of that system inside an unmanned vehicle. There is no onboard engineering crew, no real-time repair capability, no ability to respond dynamically to unexpected reactor behavior. The system must operate autonomously for potentially weeks or months. That does not make it impossible. It does mean reliability becomes the dominant constraint. Then there is propulsion. Russian media has claimed Poseidon can reach speeds of up to 100 knots underwater, approximately 185 kilometers per hour. Hydrodynamics do not scale kindly at those speeds. Underwater drag increases dramatically as velocity rises. The energy required to push a 100-ton vehicle through dense seawater at 100 knots would be immense. More importantly, the faster it moves, the more acoustic noise it produces. Even if the reactor can generate sufficient power, high-speed transit would create a distinct acoustic signature and significant thermal output. Waste heat must be dissipated into surrounding water. That creates temperature gradients that modern undersea sensor networks are increasingly capable of detecting. Most independent assessments place a realistic maximum speed somewhere between 60 and 70 knots. Still extremely fast for an underwater vehicle, but not invulnerable, not invisible. At lower cruising speeds, Poseidon would be quieter, slower, more difficult to track. That likely aligns better with its strategic purpose. It is not designed to sprint across oceans in hours. It is designed to guarantee retaliation, even if that takes time. Then there is depth. Russian claims cite operating depths of up to 1,000 meters. That is deep. Many conventional submarines rarely operate beyond 400 to 600 meters. Pressure at 1,000 meters is enormous, roughly 100 atmospheres. The structural engineering required for repeated deep dives at that level is non-trivial. Hull integrity must be maintained around the reactor compartment, warhead section, propulsion assembly, and guidance systems. It can be done, but it adds weight, cost, and complexity. And complexity is the enemy of reliability. Navigation presents another challenge. GPS and GLONASS do not function underwater. Radio waves do not penetrate deeply into seawater. Submarines must either surface or use extremely low-frequency communications that transmit minimal data. Poseidon, cruising at depth, would be entirely on its own. The most likely navigation solution combines inertial navigation systems with pre-programmed waypoints and possibly seabed terrain mapping. Inertial navigation works by tracking acceleration and rotation relative to a known starting point. Over long distances, however, small errors accumulate. After thousands of kilometers, the system could drift significantly off course. To correct that drift, Poseidon would need occasional reference points. That might involve recognizing known underwater terrain features via sonar. It could involve acoustic beacons pre-positioned on the seabed. Surfacing for a satellite fix is theoretically possible, but doing so introduces vulnerability. A 20-meter object breaking the surface, even briefly, becomes detectable. Then comes targeting. Is Poseidon designed strictly for fixed coastal coordinates, or can it identify moving naval targets? Engaging a carrier strike group at sea requires real-time targeting data. That implies communication. Communication implies exposure. Most analysts believe Poseidon is optimized for fixed infrastructure targets, ports, naval bases, industrial coastlines, rather than maneuvering fleets. Now, consider the warhead. Early speculation suggested yields comparable to the Tsar Bomba, 50 to 100 megatons. That claim has largely been dismissed. A warhead in the 1 to 2 megaton range is more plausible and consistent with existing Russian strategic designs. Even at that level, an underwater detonation near a major harbor would be devastating. The explosion would generate massive overpressure in water. Ships in port would be destroyed. Infrastructure would collapse. Depending on local bathymetry, significant waves could form. Radioactive contamination would spread through sea spray and atmospheric drift. The radioactive tsunami imagery promoted on television is theatrical. But the contamination scenario is real. A major naval base rendered unusable for years would represent strategic disruption far beyond the immediate blast radius. So what does all this mean? It means Poseidon does not need to perform perfectly to be strategically significant. It does not need to be silent at 100 knots. It does not need to generate apocalyptic tidal waves. It only needs to function reliably enough to reach a coastal target in a second strike scenario. And that bar, while technically demanding, is not impossible. Russia has decades of experience with compact naval reactors. It has deep-water submarine engineering expertise. It has demonstrated ability to field unconventional systems. The real uncertainty lies not in whether Poseidon can exist. It lies in how many exist, how reliable they are, and how operationally ready they truly are. And that uncertainty, deliberate or accidental, feeds directly into its strategic value. Because nuclear deterrence is not about certainty, it is about doubt. For 70 years, nuclear deterrence has followed a grim structure. Land-based missiles in hardened silos, submarine-launched ballistic missiles hidden in deep oceans, strategic bombers on airborne alert. This nuclear triad exists for one reason: guaranteed retaliation. Even if one leg is destroyed, the others survive. That mutual vulnerability is what keeps major powers from launching first strikes. The logic is brutal, but stable. Poseidon does not replace that structure. It complicates it. From Moscow's perspective, the anxiety accelerated in 2002 when the United States withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. Missile defense systems were deployed in Alaska, California, and later Eastern Europe. Officially, they were intended to counter rogue states such as North Korea or Iran. Technically, that explanation held weight. The number of interceptors was nowhere near sufficient to stop hundreds of Russian warheads. But Russian planners viewed missile defense as a long-term trajectory. A handful of interceptors today could become dozens tomorrow. Dozens could become hundreds. And nuclear deterrence depends on certainty. If Russian leadership ever believes that American defenses could neutralize a significant percentage of a retaliatory strike, then the psychological foundation of mutually assured destruction begins to weaken. Even the perception of that shift introduces instability. Poseidon directly addresses that fear. It bypasses missile defense entirely. Even if missile defense became highly effective against ICBMs, Poseidon would remain untouched by that architecture. Speed becomes secondary. Whether it takes 3 days or 3 weeks to reach a target does not matter in a second strike scenario. Retaliation does not need to be immediate. It needs to be inevitable. That inevitability is the core message. But the system introduces complications. Existing arms control agreements, particularly New START, categorize nuclear weapons by delivery system: ICBMs, SLBMs, and heavy bombers. Warheads are counted and capped accordingly. Poseidon fits none of these categories. It is not an ICBM. It is not an SLBM. It is not a bomber-delivered weapon. That creates a gray zone. Russia could theoretically deploy 30 Poseidon vehicles without them counting under current treaty caps. That may not violate the letter of existing agreements, but it erodes transparency and predictability. And when predictability declines in nuclear doctrine, miscalculation risk rises. Then there is autonomy. Traditional nuclear systems require human authorization at multiple levels. Political leadership authorizes launch. Military officers execute procedures. Technical safeguards prevent accidental detonation. Poseidon alters that chain. Once launched and submerged at 500 meters depth, traveling thousands of kilometers, it cannot maintain conventional communication. Radio waves do not penetrate seawater effectively. Extremely low-frequency signals can transmit minimal data, but not continuous command updates. That means the vehicle must operate on pre-programmed instructions. If it is launched during a crisis, and the crisis de-escalates days later, there may be no reliable mechanism to recall it. In October 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine near Cuba nearly launched a nuclear torpedo at American destroyers. The vessel had been submerged for days. Communication with Moscow was lost. The captain believed war may have already begun. Launching the nuclear torpedo required agreement from 3 senior officers on board. 2 approved. 1 refused. That officer, Vasily Arkhipov, prevented escalation. Poseidon contains no onboard Arkhipov. Whether that increases or decreases risk depends on perspective. The system may reduce launch vulnerability, but it reduces real-time human oversight once deployed. Poseidon likely exists in operationally meaningful numbers, perhaps not dozens fully deployed, but more than prototypes. The submarines exist. The test launches have occurred. Claims of a reactor-powered test in October 2025, if accurate, would represent a significant technical milestone. If Poseidon proves strategically useful, imitation is plausible. And that is perhaps the most consequential element. Because once autonomous nuclear systems enter the strategic balance, they do not disappear. Subscribe for deep, fact-based military analysis. See you in the next one.